obviously, anyone who wants to can add later. We have something of an awkward situation, and most of the people I see here are people I saw this morning. So things may get a bit repetitive, or may go very quickly. But we'll make the best of this and see what we can do. I know that Atsushi Kaneda is new to the session today, so we'll try to pick on him. And we didn't hear from Dr. Nagai much this morning, so I guess we'll pick on him as well. So, Atsushi, can you are you capable of speaking even if you can't see us? Who's having problems?
He's gone again.
He was, I think he was going to reboot and try to get in again. Well, let's step aside. Dr. Nagai, we didn't hear from you at all this morning. And my apologies for not involving you more directly first round. So if I understand what you're saying from your poster, and it's that as the Kuroshio goes over all this topography in Japan, it creates a lot of turbulence and introduces a lot of nutrients up into the surface layer. So what are the depths of this topography that's being interacted with? I don't know the Japanese oceans very well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Kuroshio flows starts from the east of Philippines Island, and then goes north to east of Taiwan, and then after passing the Taiwan, north of Taiwan, there is a reach like called the island reach. The depth is as shallow as the 100-meter depth at the shallowest part, and some part is actually shallower, like rocks above the ocean surfaces. And then it goes northwest, go into the Okinawa Trough, where the topography shapes is like a half pipe of the the wintertime Olympic seasons. And then it flows along the continental slopes on the northwestern side of the this Okinawa Trough, and the topography is kind of smooth relatively, but the depth is as shallow as the typical continental shapes, 100, 200-meter depth. And then it turns direction from the Kuroshio direction from northwest to southeast. Then the Kuroshio has to go through the Tokara Strait, where the many seamounts are there. And then the depth is around as shallow as 100-meter depth. And then the number of seamounts are so many. I think it's more than 10. And the direction of the path of the Kuroshio is relatively steady. And so it's continuously hitting the seamounts and then producing the negative potential vortices. And there is also the tidal circulation, also so very strong turbulence. I have been measuring turbulence in the Kuroshio extensions before this Tokara Strait measurements, and I found the turbulence as strong as 10 to the minus 7. That would be the strongest turbulence, TK dissipation rate. But in the Tokara Strait, 10 to the minus 7 watt per kilogram is the average values. And sometimes it reaches 10 to the minus 5 watt per kilogram, and very strong turbulence is always occurring there. Yes, and then the Kuroshio subsurface has a lot of nutrients, and Kuroshio has been known as the nutrient stream, similar to the Gulf Stream. So, and this depth range, 100, 200 meter depth, is about neutral decline below the Kuroshio. So these strong turbulence in the rough, above the rough topography produces a diagonal fluxes to the subsurface layers of the shallower part of the subsurface layers of the under the Kuroshio, in the Kuroshio, and probably inducing the increase of the phytoplankton amount of the phytoplankton in the subsurface layers, which may not be able to be seen from the satellite because it's still in the subsurface. And my recent measurements, which was not included in the poster, is actually showing the subsurface increase of the chlorophyll A pigments. So this latest result supports this hypothesis. Yeah, that's something.
But does it, I mean, as the
Yep.
Kuroshio goes, it passes over like the Izu Ridge. Does this all happen again? Is this sort of reinitiated every time it goes over new topography? Because the turbulence does dissipate downstream, right?
So yeah, the idea is that the turbulence overturning timescale could be scaled with, I forgot, the length scale, vertical length scale of the maybe sea mounts as large as 100 meter. And then with the TK dissipation rate, and it turns out that so we used the 100 meter vertical lengths of the microscale turbulence length scale, and then TK dissipation rate epsilon as 10 to the minus 7, which leads to the time scale of the turbulent overturning or turbulent decaying time scale is over about 1 hour at maximum. But according to our measurements, the strong turbulence of on average 10 to the minus 7 watt per kilogram continues over 100 kilometers. And the most recent one confirmed that it continues maybe 150 or 200 kilometers from the seamounts, away from the seamounts, along the Kuroshio. That means that this very long-lasting turbulence should be supported by other mechanisms, and we think this. So we are trying to understand these mechanisms, and then we run the numerical model and look for the other previous studies and found that a sub-mesoscale anticyclonic vorticity generations by the frictional generation of the potential vorticity at the northeastern side of the steep seamounts, where the Kuroshio flowing from northwest to southeast ward. And this PV, negative potential vortice in the northern hemisphere, should support this long-lasting turbulence, where the symmetric instability and centrifugal inertial instability trying to erase this negative potential vortex to set the neutral PV equals 0.
I noticed that your map on your poster of CO2 uptake showed a large shadow of increased uptake, oceanic uptake of CO2. Kuroshio that does not seem to be present in the same map over the Gulf Stream. It suggests that what we need to do is to induce a lot of nearshore volcanism so we get some seamounts off of Cape Hatteras. I guess ours are too deep.
No, maybe not.
Sorry. So
He's suggesting growing some volcanoes, so we have topography like that off the east coast.
Okay.
I had a question. I had a question for you this morning. Dr. Silvieri was pointing out the shear under the Brazil current and the portion where there's an intermediate current right underneath, and so that level of shear supporting a high level of instability, presumably Kelvin Helmholtz or Homeboy or something. And so which is more the terms that I'm used to thinking about. So for the symmetric instabilities and the scales, how do they compare, do you think? Those sort of two different ways of turbulence providing deep water to the shallower layers.
Uh, so the shear,
And are they, is this an analogy of some sort that could be explored?
right. So I think the vertical shear, so this case, so for in the Tokara Strait case, the lateral shear is created by the sloping bottom boundary layer, and the scale would be a few hundred meter depth or few hundred meter width, which could be tilted, and then turns the horizontal shear to the vertical shears. Maybe those things can be happen near the topography, but in the Brazilian current system, I'm not familiar with the Brazilian current system, but strong vertical shear supposed to be one of the potential conditions to have the strong turbulence. For example, if you have the strong baroclinic shear with also the barotropic shear, horizontal barotropic shears, another mechanism would be the trapping the near inertial internal waves. So this vertical shear and also the anticyclonic strong shear both supports both coincide with the low potential vorticity, and yet is not the negative potential vorticity or the different sign. If it turns to the different signs, the symmetric instability or the centrifugal instability occurs. But before that, or after these negative potential vorticity erased, there still be the potential to enhance the turbulence by trapping the near lowest internal wave frequency internal waves in the near inertial internal waves. So these low PV or the negative PV are both acting to producing the very favorable conditions for supporting the strong turbulence. And my student, Silvana Duran, also worked on the similar topics that in her model results shows that there's a Kuroshio flowing the south of the Kyushu, sometimes approaching toward the shore, and we found that the topography there is a small bumps, and then if the Kuroshio approaches, this small bump create a negative potential vorticity, and then strong turbulence. But in the numerical model, of course, it's still 500 meter resolutions, which can create the negative potential vorticity, but cannot resolve the symmetric instability or the centrifugal instability, but can create the low frequency internal waves. And we found that also the diffusivity is parameterized with the KPP. And this KPP parameterized diffusivity depends on the Richardson number, and low Richardson number seems to enhance the diffusions there. Also, we saw that the banding of the high wave number shears in the numerical model without forcing any wind forcing or the tidal forcing. Just flowing Kuroshio near the topography create these high vertical wave number shears parallel along almost parallel to the isothickness, which suggestive of the near lowest frequency internal waves, and seems like trapped in the low PV regions. And these seems to be creating that strong diffusive flux of the nutrients, and which continues to several 50 to 100 kilometers along the Kuroshio and enhancing the subsurface primary productions in the numerical model.
Yeah,
Which may
I
not,
asked her some
yes.
questions this morning. That's a very
Yes.
nice poster.
Yeah, maybe Silvana can answer some questions. Yes.
Make a question to Dr. Nagai.
Yes.
Dr. Nagai, I'm not a physical oceanographer. I'm a marine biogeochemistry. I'm a biologist. But I've seen in the last 2 decades, that the physical oceanographers, they became very enthusiastic about the chlorophyll. It seems as they found that there is something called chlorophyll, which means phytoplankton and lots of primary production. And sometimes they neglected a little bit the species composition of these deep chlorophyll maximum layers, because the composition can change completely the carbon flow. If it is diatoms, if it is a new production system, it exports. It is very important for the flow in the trophic web. But if it's a very oligotrophic environment, very deep environment, sometimes this deep chlorophyll maximum is just photoadaptation of cyanobacteria. It doesn't mean more carbon. There is no more biomass. In your case, in your poster, did anyone just show any species composition of these deep chlorophyll maximum layers? I mean, it's fine that there is this kinetic energy, all these physical mechanisms that bring nutrients, but I think for me, it's interesting to know the follow-up. What is going to be with what's going to happen with these deep chlorophyll maxima? Is real carbon, more carbon with photoadaptation? Could you make some comments on this, just to clarify, please?
Right. So I'm not a biological oceanographer and may not be able to answer these questions, but yes. So we should look at the water sampling and to specify the species of the phytoplankton in the deep chlorophyll maximum. Also, another thing would be I was working also on the photoacclimations previously using the numerical model. And these subsurface chlorophyll maxima could be produced also by the photoacclimations during the daytime. But I don't know. Sorry, but yes, in south of Kyushu, it looks like these diaphycnal mixing produces large diatoms blooms too.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't checked this in this particular subsurface chlorophyll maximus whether this is formed by which species. I don't know yet, so I have to look at that. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, here in Brazil, we have the formation of these deep chlorophyll maximus, and whenever they are over the shelf, in a more shallow waters, diatoms dominated, but of course they also photoadapt. Photoadaptation there is always, because light conditions is not good. So if any phytoplankton will need more chlorophyll to trap that light. But sometimes you have a real production. They adapt and they produce more. I always see deep oxygen maximum always associated with this, but this is over the shelf. But when you are out of the shelf, in the Brazil current main axis, in the shelf break, or when it's a very deep, that most of this deep chlorophyll is just the photoadaptation of cyanobacteria. So for me, it's interesting to understand if there is this also, if you have this kind of situation also in the Kuroshio system.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have also deployed a LINCO profiler which measures oxygens along with the turbulence sensors, and I haven't looked at the oxygen sensors result yet. Maybe yes.
Yeah, just have a look if the oxygen is also high, not exactly in the deep chlorophyll, but usually they are higher, just above, a little above. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I will look at that. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
So that's one of our primary questions on our shelf is that, so when you shoot nutrients onto the shelf into the euphotic zone with the Gulf Stream meander process, what is the time scale and which populations react? Is it something that's going to be very small and respire quickly and just continue to recycle on the shelf, or is it And so Gus Papenhoffer has seen blooms of both doliolids, which reproduce quite rapidly, and then are these lovely, apparently, export vectors sync nicely. And other times it's diatom blooms. Whereas immediately north of Cape Hatteras, where a lot of shelf water goes offshore, work in that area has shown it's all this very small stuff. And so even though there is a lot of water going offshore and a fair amount of biological activity on that shelf, it doesn't seem to be a carbon pump. And so I think the matching with timescales and populations with the timescales of the physics requires a lot more exploration.
Atsushi Kaneda has gotten back in with us. Atsushi, could you introduce yourself to the people here? Can you do that?
He's recalcitrant.
Yeah.
I think I can't connect.
There it is. Okay, we can hear you now. So Dr. Kaneda was a visiting scientist here at Skidway, gosh, a long time ago now. So I was at Sushi in your poster, it showed that the Kuroshio water, that isolated Kuroshio water that was coming in was phosphorus deficient relative to the Redfield ratios. Does that mean that the production in your area is also phosphate limited?
Not sure if you can hear us.
Maybe he's typing an answer.
Okay.
Ah,
You can hear. Can you respond by text? Okay. Yeah,
we were really looking forward to seeing Atsushi because it's been such a long time since we saw him.
We can hear your fingers, we can hear
We
your
can
chin.
hear you typing.
Energy saving. If you continue.
Well, I type slowly, unfortunately. Let's see.
So Harvey Syme is also here. He was not here this morning.
Yep.
There's Harvey. That was quick.
Hey, Harvey.
See.
People I want to talk to, run away.
Well, we don't have a lot to say here today. Yes,
Yeah.
feeling.
They can do that all the time too.
Yeah.
They can make comments and everything and people will see that. So we can do.
Okay, wait.
Thanks, we're very undramatic.
That's good. It's interesting.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, So do we have someone else that
Oh.
we could switch to?
He's
Typing away, well, I think perhaps I could have, I see Miss Bird is back in the room, she disappeared momentarily. Juliana, can you hear us?
Now, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
have- I
I
have
wanted
to, yes, sorry.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to circle back. I had a question for you this morning and things just sort of moved on past it. So in your poster, you show that the subantarctic water and the Guatemala water move off to the north and then past the exit point and then come back. Is that simply being entrained in currents, or is there a wind reversal that's responsible for that? Why does it go north and then come
Go.
back?
Yes, in that part of the shelf of the Argentinian and Brazilian shelf, there are two currents. The subtropical shelf water going to the south and the subantarctic shelf water going to the north. And when they meet each other, they go to the open ocean. So the subantarctic shelf water go to the north until it meets with the subtropical shelf water and then go back to the south and then is exported to the open ocean. And how much this water go to the north and then go outside or to the open ocean depends on the time of the year. There's some research, but based on a numerical model that shows that in one moment of the year, the subantarctic shelf water go 36, I believe, 36 degrees south and go outside. But in other time, it goes north, a lot more norther, and then go outside. So I don't know which is the force, the force. I don't know how to say it. Why? But there's some numerical model that explain it. But there are not in situ data that show it. And here we have the La Plata River that is over the subtropical cell front. So we cannot use satellite data to analyze this front.
So we have an analogous front on the U.S. East Coast,
Yes,
and in that front, for many parts of the year, it's not
Yes.
completely density compensated, and so the velocities in that front are shoreward, despite the strong convergence that supports the front. And the other
Here-
thing that happens with that front is it moves along shore quite dramatically. And so I was wondering if there had ever been observations of a shoreward current in that front, and whether it was as moved along shore, or whether it was more pinned to the bathymetry or the position of the Brazil front separation or anything.
There's some numerical model from Matano. I don't know if it is 2014 or 2018 that shows a movement of this front in the year. But there are not in situ data that can show this. the movement is along the shelf, and the front is a cross shelf front. So the outer part of the front is in the place where the Brazil Malvinas confluence is, and the northern depends on where the subantarctic shelf water can reach to the north. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I just wonder how it compares to the Hatteras front, which moves quite a bit despite the separation point of the Gulf Stream not moving. And so that was my question, and whether you ever saw shoreward velocities or whether the density gradient was always compensated or in the opposite direction.
The density gradient here in the subtropical shelf front is nearly compensated, but it has a difference. So it has some geostrophical velocities that implies an export of shelf water. This situation can be seen in situ data in a survey. There's some other reports that says that it is density compensated. So I believe that depends on the time and the property of the different waters. And we have the Brazil Malvinas confluence that has a seasonal variance in the latitude. So the south part of the shelf front has a movement, a latitudinal movement.
Thank you.
Since most of us were here all morning, I'm not sure that how much more we can cover here. I'm happy to host the conversation if we wanted to go on, but I recognize that we have done this already, most of us. and except for typing notes to Atsushi, I guess. Does anyone else have any additional questions or comments they want to make? Federico seems to be speaking but he is muted. Oops. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did you ask if we have a questions to whom? To anybody specific? Or?
To anyone. I think that,
No, I just want to make a very interesting comparison. They said that Kuroshio current is phosphorus limited, limited by phosphorus. Yeah, here in the Brazil current, very tropical oligotrophic systems also tends to be limited by phosphorus because there is a lots of nitrogen fixation here. Trichodesmium, cyanobacteria, even in symbiosis with many cells, there is in Coccolithophorids, nitrogen fixation needs 10 times more phosphorus than. And so sometimes when you make these Redfield ratios, you see ratios of 100 to 200 because of that. So it's very interesting to know that in Kuroshio, we have also a very strong nitrogen limitation. That's what I want to just point this, yeah.
We had someone just trying to enter.
Yeah, that was, I think, Felipe from this morning, but then he kicked back out.
Okay, everyone seems pretty quiet at this point. I guess we'll go ahead and call it an evening. I'm sorry we couldn't get more people. I had a number of our potential speakers didn't show up tonight. But I'd like to thank you all for making this effort twice now, for most of you. We're still hoping to see you all in person in November. We shall see, right? Good night, and thank you all.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.